less than 2 hours. I'm just going to jump into it, and then we can just go from there little by little. And the way I want to structure this demo is going to be, I think, first 40 minutes, give and take. I think cover a little bit working at this scale, work on the technical aspect of it that's evolved, and then hopefully people kind of actually learn some skills about working large and on the wheel. And then the second half of it, I would say, is kind of more about the why. Why am I doing what I'm doing? And then hopefully after that, you guys can get into my work a little bit better. So I did have a large pizza, so I'm feeling very powerful. Yeah. I'm gonna start with wedging. So the clay I use is a B-mix. This is actually a sculpture bag, which I think would be great for the wedging aspect of it. Sometimes I like to use a little bit stiffer clay, when I'm working large. But, in an ideal situation, I would probably cut the clay to start, even though it's like fresh clay. So we concentrate the particles and all that, and then I will go through wedging. So I do want to cover a little bit on wedging. I think it's a very overlooked, but super important aspect of making. And preparations, everything. So with B-mix, this clay has this thing called a thixotropic. What happens is, even though it's fresh clay, but if you don't activate it, it's very stiff and hard to work with. So what I do is I usually use gravity to help me. Just get the clay a little softer. I kind of wish I could face this way. And I'm going to do a spiral wedging. The way I spiral wedge is in similar direction of the wheel. So since in the West, it's counterclockwise. So
Hey Frank, can you speak up a little bit? I'm sorry.
This is going to be my speaking voice, but I will try my best. Yeah.
Okay.
So I'm going to try to wedge counterclockwise.
You always wedge on your knees?
Do I always wedge?
Always wedge on your knees?
For 25 pounds, I wedge on the floor. Because what I really want to do is I want to be able to utilize my torso weight. So whatever this weight is, 100 pounds, I just say, versus 25 pounds, much more manageable than wedging on a table, where it's going to be my shoulder muscle plus a little bit my torso weight. So it's like wedging on the floor to give me a little bit more leverage. Let's get started. The benefit of spiral wedging is that instead of dealing with the whole 25 pounds of clay, I'm only dealing with a small portion of it. This is roughly about, 6 to 7 pounds of clay instead of 25. The benefit of it is, it's a very traditional technique, because back in the day, people used clay. They actually made their own clay, and there's a lot of rocks, impurities, and then this way we can separate them little by little, and then the impurity will eventually come out, and demonstrate how it works. I just say there's a rock in here, and then after a few rotations, this air bubble will disappear. start, you're like, oh, clay is getting pretty good. We're gonna reduce the amount of push, and then eventually roll this clay into one piece. That. It is a bit of a workout. So it's going to take 1 minute.
Yeah.
Just think about what you just did. Visualize what we're about to do. And then do a little introduction. So I've been making pots for about 15 years, I think. I started when I was in college. And then before that, I was a chemistry student. So I started doing the whole biochemistry pre-med kind of route. And I think second year, I just realized like, I don't want to stay in school for like 8 years. And then I don't want to do research because I had to fail. I realized I don't have the mental constitution for that type of work. So I started exploring. College was a great time for that. And I was in a time in my life where I was very open for experiences and influences. And eventually I stumbled upon art. And then I went to Stan's. My mentor at the time was Stan. Stan was a very, very influential teacher for me. And he was one of those artists. He's very innovative. You know, every year, I feel like his work is and it's almost like he's able to speak so many different languages all the way. And I was very inspired by that. So for a while, since I don't have any art experiences prior to that, you know, it was me learning how to speak English when I was 17. You know, I had some like foundations, of course, but I didn't really learn how to speak until, you know, when I came here from high school. And then in college, I was like, visual art, a completely different system, different vocabularies, and how do I speak that? And then Stan, I learned a lot of vocabularies from Stan. And then the pieces I brought over, it's basically a sort of like the pieces that I felt represent some aspect of that. You know, I started with my functional forms, learned just how to make nice pots, and then little by little, think about volume more and more. After I understood the metaphor of the vessel, right? One of the oldest metaphor in the ceramics. It's, you know, people have interpretation of that and explored that for tens of years. So from there, I little by little start breaking down my own language. These are kind of the later brushwork kind of works. At the beginning, it was more literal, you know, because I can speak Chinese. So I would literally just write Chinese characters. But I was like, why am I doing that? You know, it's like I'm, in a way, not a Chinese artist. You know, I learned art in the United States. You know, sure, I grew up in China, but like how much connection are there actually? I don't make Chinese pots in any sort of like direct way. So I start breaking down the Chinese characters little by little, start from brushworks, and then just using them almost more like a formal sort of expression, you know, taking parts of a character, using it more gesturally, and try to see what kind of shapes that I can make with it. And then I've made a lot of wheels in an altar form as well. So that little, a lot of people call it caterpillar. I think you can see that. It's made in 4 parts, all wheel. The texture is, all wheel. And I like to change the orientation. Something about defining how it's originally made. It's graphed is this way, it's going up, but just disorient it a little bit, see what kind of thing could happen. And eventually, I kind of start making the work that I'm going to do today. All right, I think I caught my breath. So for this just got here, I just wedged on the floor, about 25 pounds. I want to talk a little bit about my setup too. I was debating, do I need to bring my wheel here or not? Not just because it's a color scheme matches, but also I set up this little extension, so I have much better visual ways that I can access my tools. So some tools are very almost like surgical or power tools. Like paddle would be one of those tools, right? They can really significantly change the form. So I have those tools on hand, short form tools. Another tool that can drastically change how I play this board. And then for my wheel section, I like to keep it fairly organized. One thing I discovered is just by having your ribs or throwing tools lifted on a smaller platform, it helps you keep it organized, right? Just have that visual separation between rests. Because we all know after 30 minutes, you start losing tools. So I'm gonna do a little bit of dry centering. So right now I'm just pushing this as close to center, but I think I can do it. Wheel speed becomes really important. And you want to go a little bit slower than when you're making smaller ones. So a lot of times you have a tendency to over-rotate. And I'm going to cover some mechanic of the wheel as I go. But I think understanding what's happening with the wheel, how gravity, centrifugal force, and how you interact with it, really changes, right? Like even on a scale. Lock your arm in and lean into the body with it. I love this stool. Got it like 10 years ago. $60 on the last day because they don't want to ship it back. And it's got a really good lower back support, and it's very stable. So right now I'm just gonna keep it organized. It's similar to the spiral wedging, right? Instead of dealing with this whole 25 pounds, I'm dealing with a smaller amount of clay. So I'm kind of strategically to make it easier for myself to center. A lot of my students are here tonight. They will hear me kind of bitch about the economic usage of water. Not for environmental reasons, but for water's relationship between water and clay. It's kind of fascinating because we can work with this material without water, but at the same time, it will weaken the material. So finding that delicate balance between the two. It's kind of the most important aspect of the work that I have to scale. So just bring the centeredness from the top, little by little, downward. And I'm sitting fairly tall, close to the wheel head, so I can actually use my force of weight again. I'm not muscling it. A lot of people say, to make large work, you have to be really strong. It's not the case. Also, for what I did with the spiral wedging, it's not necessary to wedge the whole 25. You can cut it block in half, do a 10 pound, and then stack another 10 pound on top. But right now, since I'm a behind, and I kind of like to challenge myself doing something that's at my limit. For how long I can do it, I don't know, but I'm gonna do it as long as I can. Once you get to the wider part of it, you actually want to modulate your wheel speed down a little bit more. And I'm a left foot pedaler, so the reason is that at a certain point I'm going to have to stand up and throw, because it will be longer than my forearm. And when I'm standing up, most of my weight is on my right foot, so if I have a pedal on my right foot, I can't really control the pedal as well. So I've adapted to using my right foot to control the speed. Clean, so you can actually see what's going on. And then I'll send it down here to always address the syntax. Go straight down. And then reinforce it. Just put that syntax in. Losing a little material, something to happens. So far, I've used 2 slices of pizza worth of energy. So I have 3 more slices left. And that's about how much I'm gonna come down. Because we're trying to get height, and then getting height, we don't have to have a super flat disc, right? That's just more height than we do with clay. So somewhere up here, something like this. Reasonable. Some people prefer to start a little taller. I like to give myself plenty of access. So I open it with some foam. I open fairly large using its natural curve in my hand. Control the top. Big part about being free on the wheel is actually throw it without a bottom. When you throw it without a bottom, you're no longer limited later on by the circular shape. A lot of these vessels that I'm making, I will kind of alter them further at a later stage. Not having a floor, alternate to the open way, square it, or actually. Right now I'm just going to go all the way to the back. It does make throwing a little bit different because when you have a floor, it's very easy to find that relationship between inside and outside because it's naturally staggered by the floor, right? So inside is in position, slightly higher, slightly forward. When you throw all the way to the back, you have to kind of intentionally remind yourself if there's no floor, then you can find that relationship. So now I've reached the floor. I'm going to expand, and then so I can have a slightly bigger floor grip. Moderate wheel speed, and my rotation on time, and the wheel will work for you. I know it's hard to see what I'm doing, but right now I'm just using my middle finger. It's 3 fingers is working right now to expand the floor. And I'm using my right hand to support it. So I'm not just relying on this muscle here. I'm actually using my other arm strings. And then I can lean back a little bit with my torso. But having a gym membership doesn't go wider and wider. You want to slow down the wheel a little bit. The reason is that, well, wheel speed remains the same. It's at a slightly wider diameter. It takes less time for that rotation to finish. So you either just slow down how fast you can, or you slow down the wheel. And I personally prefer slow down the wheel than slow down. Almost there. So right now with this, the bottom is white. So I think we'll have a somewhat enough access from it to my hand, but also not too narrow or not too wide. So we can still have taller forms occupy space. A bit different compared to a slightly bigger opening. And then go really quarter inch. Now I've established the foundation of the cylinder. Spend some time to get this access out. I'm not even tooling right now, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to organize this guitar surface. See a little bit shakiness over here. I see a little bit unevenness up here. So this is the first one. I'm just setting up for my first pool. Again, go to a moderate speed. What I'm doing is I'm using this part of my hand, large surface, medium part, and then just gently press against it. And once you find your design end, start moving up. It's not really about getting high right now. I'm just trying to organize so hopefully easier for ourselves to work with. It's also a good time to kind of start having that conversation as it's a cylinder. What's the stage of the clay? How it's conditioned? We do a good job of measuring. Is it consistent? You know. So I'm getting a lot of information right now from just having these interactions. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to actually cone it. So I like to roll this few rings of clay kind of more towards on top of my actual wall. So a lot of times when I'm teaching an exam student who can't access this clay and translate it to height, that's because this weight is not on the wall. So what I'm doing is I'm going to just contain it. You're going to get some height naturally with downward pressure on the top. So that's the one. I think we're ready for our first one. Okay. I like to go fairly aggressive on my first pull, so instead of using my fingertips, I like to use my knuckle, use the bony part of it. This way, really lift. Because at the beginning, when clay is low, it's closer to the wheel head. It's the best time to get high. And you really want to utilize the first two pulls as high as possible. And then I'm going to swap to a different finger that has better sensitivity. So it's kind of like a trade-off, right? You get some power, lose some sensitivity, vice versa.
Can you speak louder, please?
I'll do my best. So it's going to be this back and forth. I'm spreading the cylinder a little bit thinner at a time, but I'm also containing it so it doesn't get too wide. Because again, we're fighting centrifugal force, right? Centrifugal force wants to bring it out. So we're constantly trying to coordinate. I have access to the bottom. So what is correct? Still gonna go about that. Spend time on the bottom. Right? You don't want to rush it. You know, I'm really trying to find that relationship before I come in. You know, and I'm just filling it out, establishing a relationship. Right? I mean, I found it. A little bit more lubrication. Once you get higher, the cylinder can become two cylinders. So there's a bottom cylinder, and then there's a top cylinder. And then this ring top is the most important structural ring. If you can stabilize this ring, having the material, it's gonna give yourself a lot more stability. Shape. But now I'm getting to the point where this is the height that I can start noticing the separation between the bottom cylinder and the top cylinder. So I can be more active on my speed control to my foot at this point. I think I'm going to switch to using my fingers. I'm not sure. Let's try. Establish that relationship first. Stay there until you got it. Observing a certain line. This certain line looks really tight to me. But overall, in a healthy ballpark. Now I'm going to slightly increase my wheel speed at this point. So just finishing the last few rotations. A little quicker wheel speed. Following through is my cool, but I'm not sitting out too much. Yeah, so again, it's at the bottom, it's a bigger cylinder, slightly wider. and then foundation. Okay. It takes a little longer to finish that rotation. You really want to grab the clay, so the soil really helps. But this part, it's going to become shorter on the top. It's always to be at least tend to get thinner a little quicker. So I actually want to stir a little bit less over here, so I don't have to linger as much. So increasing the wheel speed helps me just like just to get away. The comb, this one we can probably get a lot higher. Start the wheel speed a little faster. So you can control the sound. Now the wheel spinning part is becoming kind of fun. This way, there's moments where somebody loses control or losing control. It's exciting. Just based on the experience, we've probably got 2 more pull left. The resource on my finger. I don't know, it wasn't as effective as I thought. Could have probably stayed this knuckle one more time. A lot about working large is material planning. You want to plan ahead. And also know yourself, how you set up. Some people have really powerful first 2 pulls, and then they couldn't have the material to support the third or the first one. So I kind of like what we did. Really just picking up the clay. If the clay is really responsive for things like today, I tend to go a little bit more aggressive and I swap quicker into my more sensitive kind of pulls. For a shower. So now I'm both looking at the top and also looking at the bottom. Making sure my arms aren't dragging too much. Take your time. Yeah, back on it. Take your time. That little wobble tells me it's getting stretched. It's getting a little thinner. The moment I can bring my thumb out and then when it's on the outside, it just gets more stability. Just the wrist. Press the top. Now I'm going to do a kind of making an inquiry. Like, can I do one more pull? The way I do it is just by tugging the clay and see how much it gives, how much resistance I get. So the clay is still resistant, so I think I can pull. Slightly faster wheel speed. This is over here. That's okay. Let's see how we function. I'm going to do one more pull. For this pull, I'm going to just embrace the censorships and have such brutal force. If it wants to come out, since we're going to go out after using things, I'm just going to embrace that. To the bottom a little bit, get some nice water. Wheel speed. It's pretty natural to have a slightly thicker bottom when you work this large. If you think about it like almost like a building, a small one had a bigger
4 o'clock.
Right, yeah. We are working slightly larger scale. It's 4 o'clock. That's the minute apply anymore. For people that don't know what that means, it's like the way I see the wheel, see it as a clock. 12 o'clock, 6 o'clock. What's over your time? We don't care about that. There's no point in looking at that. So I like to work around 4 to 5 o'clock. Very rarely I will work at 0 o'clock. Most of the time, I work around this area. This is because, we have the most connection. My arms is tucked into my torso. I have a lot of stability. We're triangulating, forming those nice steady shape. Just gonna remove a little bit of this excess. Not much. I'm going to do a compressing kind of throw. So there's a lot of deep throwing line on the inside. And if we just start stretching as it is, like eventually it will spread thin enough to throwing line, you can actually see it. And for the type of work that I'm trying to make, I want to remove the throwing lines. So I'm doing 2 ribs and compress the wall. Start from the bottom. 2 ribs are still honoring the same relationship, where they are matched up by rotation of time, just removing the surface slip. Since we're done getting high, we really don't need moisture anymore.
Are they directly across from each other?
They are slightly forward and slightly, yeah. So about less than half of fingertips. What's happening is we want to compensate for the width of the wall. So even though they're slightly staggered, they're actually matched up.
Could you show your finger position again?
Slightly forward. It's very subtle. The reason is we are essentially dealing with 2 different diameters, inside diameter and outside diameter. So by staggering it by just a little bit, we compensate for that, but they're actually matched up.
And your inside hand is higher than your outside?
Not when I'm using the fingers, but when I'm sewing with my fingertips, yes. It's by about half a finger. And you can always use your sewing line to give yourself feedbacks. When the relationship is correct, you'll have very healthy sewing lines. If the relationship is incorrect, well, there's many ways they can correct it. Press it again, remove a little more. The mouse will start shaking a little bit. Right now I'm getting a lot of information about this cylinder. I'm doing this, how strong it is. For all my Higa using case, Higa is my credit card. Spend your cash first without using it, but sometimes you have more. I don't think we need it tonight. Use the different ribs. Different configuration of the ribs can really help you either structurally or for stability or for surface. So I've reached the limit of this rib. I love it because it's longer and I can compress a bigger surface area. But because the material is like different gauge steel, it doesn't give me the cleanness that I need. So I'm going to swap to a rubber rib on both sides. And then that way I can get a much better surface quality. Just breathing into the palm now. Let the rotation of the wheel do the work for you. I'm not a very aggressive stretcher. I've stretched very aggressive before, but I like to take my time and then which each, pull and see see small gradual changes. It's mostly the preference, I'm not in a rush, Well, for demo maybe a little bit. I don't want to cover as much ground as I can. On a faster day, I can do it in 20 minutes or so, but I can try to, pace myself. I'll wedge the clay and go eat breakfast and then come back. Usually I'm averaging about 40 minutes, give and take. I like to stretch on both directions. So some people only stretch bottom up, and some people will stretch both ways, which is kind of what I do. What I find kind of discovery, I guess, for myself is that when you're stretching one directionally, the volume tends to be a little bit lower, or it's the widest part of the pot, and the gravity of it. It has this nice kind of graceful, relaxed feeling to it, but sometimes I want maybe the pot to be stand a little taller, and then I find stretching from top down, I can achieve that a little easier. Really trying to expand the shoulder. Feel this foam out. And I think I'm reaching the limit of this area on the outside, so I'm going to swap to pretty soon. Keep your tool fairly clean too. Once you accumulate enough slit, if you didn't hold it exactly right, just tilt it a little bit, this whole surface is going to contact and it's going to grab your rib. Probably going to happen in a little bit, but just, if you just keep your rib clean, you can avoid that. So I'm going to use a metal rib next. A metal rib is the most aggressive rib. It really removes all the surface moisture and slit and the noise lines. Extend this arm a little more. And I'm really working through the space between right on the bat and then, a lot of times when I see people fail at this step is when they're expanding kind of almost like a step. So you go straight and then you go out. And you create a very steep change of direction, and that that's a continuation of the interior curve. And that's most time where the problem tends to happen. So for my pots, I have very continuous curve, throughout. So that takes. I just have to spend a little more time to see. Okay, now the bottom is actually changing. Then it comes. But when you put a lot of pressure on it, and the material, so I'm going to clean it. Continue. I'm looking kind of at the horizon of the pot. So I'm not really looking at my ribs or much. I'm looking mostly at this negative space. And then, because that's really what, at the end of the day, what matters. It doesn't really matter what's on the surface. I'm going to expand it all the way from the bottom. Do a full one and just see what kind of curve I'm going to get. And then I'm going to fill the foam up. Yeah, but if you keep doing this, this part's just going to get wider, wider, and wider. And then you have a pot that has a lower gravity. There's one more, just to exaggerate it a little bit. part's getting wider and wider. Yeah. So I'm gonna reverse that a little bit. Really try to expand the shoulder. Maybe I'm overcompensating something. I don't have a very broad shoulder. You know, like the spots like that. As you expand, you're going to lose some height. Physics. It's almost time to remove this. So we don't really need all that much anymore. So just give ourselves a little bit more access. But I really don't use that much water. You know, allow me this water, whatever that means. Yeah, once you remove the splash pen, I really get access here. I'd like to fill this water a little bit more, especially a few more times, and then we move on. That's my time. 15 minutes. Nice here. I can see center.
Radical.
Let's control the wheel speed just a little bit. Because this part getting pretty wide and it actually slow down. So. And we are using two ribs to serve. You can master it. You can really control all the long moves. And sometimes you don't know, mess up, like accidentally pull it out or something. Like I can really compress and fall, and then bring it back to center. Maybe you'll see this little education. So I like to start below the symptoms. Let's go over a little bit, troubleshooting. Maybe the 10 piece, that's what happened. Just two ribs, create that channel where clay has nowhere to go but to something. Swap to a different rib. The red rib. It's always run out on the yellow clay. We're waiting for 3 weeks to buy another one. But I love this because it's almost the same consistency with fingertips. And it's almost like an extension of my finger with bigger surface area. It's kind of hard to see. A little bit, because I didn't take a form shower. That's okay, I can adjust that. beyond just it's pleasing. It's it's nice. It's cute, right? All those are words that we use to describe our works. But is there more to it? So if the whole pot has a really solid foundation, we can actually get away with a lot of those different things, you know. But I'm gonna be very, very careful with how I use my sponge. So I swapped instead of like a ceramic sponge, and that holds a lot of water. I'm switching to a less porous sponge that holds water, but you know, kind of use it on command. What I'm trying to avoid is any drips. If there's a drips fall down, when I'm stretching the pot really thin, that's enough to dissolve the wall and it just slip. So I'm going to be very, very careful. Only apply moisture locally. So I'm going to lubricate the inside. I'm going to work on to recenter this top. I'm going to lubricate this neck. And then develop that a little bit. Back to a 4 o'clock. Supporting on the inside. Go right below the center area where the centering is happening. And then just do a quick throw. I'm not trying to thin the wall too much. I'm just compressing it. Expand it down. Cylinder. So we have this whole cylinder, and then we have dealing with a smaller cylinder. This is the time we can determine how much opening do we actually want. And this is where like art history start kind of, you know, give you some clues, right? Jesus. You okay, Bart? If you look at like classical pots, right, they always have the top opening, either referencing how big the bottom is, or have some sort of like intentional difference. And you can always play with this golden ratio, right? It's 1.1 to 1.618, that thing, and play with different proportions. And you know, I think this is probably, I stayed at this stage for a really long time for my work, where I don't know how to go beyond this. You know, I've made a cylinder, made a voluminous pot, and then I've got it as perfect as I can make it. Like, but what am I saying with it? You know, like, am I just another guy that's like trying to recreate Chinese pot or Japanese pot or Korean pots or Greek pots, Roman, Mexican, you know? Like, and those are all languages that you can speak and draw from, but they're not really my language. I've become pretty good at speaking them, but I was really like eager to find out like what would be my own kind of like language. I think that's kind of what this body of work sort of represented for me. It's sort of my personal context, how I express my understanding of volume, vessel as medicine. So yeah, since we're starting a little bit, I want to fill this part out and then maybe we can move on. Remove some of this moisture that I just put on some lines. It's really going to show that that's cool. How much do y'all make pots that, I don't know, how important is preference in your work? That's a strange question. Maybe anybody have any thoughts on that? How important is your preference? Like, that take place in your work? Sometimes I think about that a lot. Do I like this? Do I not? Or is it conscious?
No, I don't think I don't really like it. Yeah. Very cautious.
How do What was the question?
The question is about preference, like how much do you let preference influence your work or your process? Like,
How much what preference?
whatever preference you have.
Like personally or of other, like potential people that are buying?
That's actually a good segue, right? How much is commerciality in your work plays into your making?
Like are you making the work that you like, or are you making the work that you think other people will like?
Yeah.
I think it depends what phase I'm in, if I'm trying to work on a specific project versus trying to take risks and learn.
Yeah. And how much work do you think you're taking risks right now?
Total
Total
risks.
risk?
Yeah,
That's good.
because I was total project, like, sick for the last 6 months.
Right.
So now I feel like I'm giving myself permission to make a lot of mistakes,
Yeah.
which
Are you
is,
talking about ceramics or are you talking about your film work?
I was just talking about ceramics. Rest as well.
Yeah, I feel like I've been taking risk for decades without much interest in commerciality. I think teaching helps, so I don't have to rely on selling costs to sustain myself. Also having, a little bit of money helps too. So, well, like from a conversation, I asked my mentor in college, I was like, how do you make this work? And he was like, very well. Like he elaborated on it. He said, it's not about necessarily financial reasons. It's actually more about finding someone that supports what you do and that translate in the long term. Much more important.
Was that from Stan?
That was what I'm saying.
I think it's a good conversation.
We're not done yet. Demo actually just started. So I spent the last 10 years basically learning how to do these on command really well. But I reached a point where I'm just like what's more to it, and I think I was intimidated. I'll be really vulnerable here for a second. That I was scared because I was really interested in the metaphor of what it means to be a vessel, what its volume speaks. And those are such a old, restored, and solved topic in clay, even though it was what drew me into clay, right? Because I understand, okay, this is really interesting when I see the relationship between human vessels. And then I was like, okay, what vessel am I going to be? And that question, I think, took me to a more inward in the journey, right? The smooth spot is never quite fit. It's the way I interact with the world. By all means, it's not smooth. Where is it? Ah. Fun. You just need to find one.
Yeah.
So I made this around maybe noon, just to let it get naturally dry. The drive up here from my house down south was kind of sketch, but it was like around 6:30, so all the school was letting out, so there's a lot of speed in it, right? So that actually helped out. Cruising like 25 miles an hour. Great. Works
Did
out.
you have that on your motorcycle?
No. Motorcycle, yeah. So I think what I'm gonna do is, finish my thought. I stopped at this point for a real long time because this is as much I think I can push clay. And then recently there's a lot of like, live stuff that's happening. And I've been thinking about like, just I can push it probably more. So, and also think about empty space. It's actually not just what's a space that occupies and it's the rest of it, but it's actually relative, right? It's an empty space, it's actually a positive space for something else. So how does that affect me, right? So it's not just spending, but the world also exists and pushing, the marks on you. So I think I'm trying to capture that in this part of the work. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna swap to a cleaner setup. So I have a cleaner water bucket, and I'm using 2 sponges. So one is slightly more damp, and one is a finishing sponge. And then I'm gonna sculpt, I guess, for like a better term. Start on the bottom. The first mark is the hardest mark, always. I think it's a lot of times it kind of tells me about what kind of day I'm having. Some days it's really easy, I just go for it. Some days I'm like really hesitant. I've never done this in front of this many people, so. Some of the drawings that I do, even just 2 drawings I made last year, I still look at them and I think about some of the shapes and see if I can find a way to translate them to a gesture about it. Also, I can't do the normal straight line cross shading, so I do a lot of swings. So I'm both pushing out and also pushing in to create like a dynamic feel to it. And then, well, first mark is in, so this is what we do. A lot of times it's quite meditative when I'm doing it at my house, at my home. I'm thinking about how this one focus the next one, hold the next one, and then morph into something else. And then there's also formal considerations, right? Conditions. Think about decorations. Who plays with my use, what the atmosphere of fire will do. I just started this conversation at this stage.
Frank, are you pushing from the inside and then using your outside hand to push around the?
Yeah, so I'm both pushing out and I'm also pushing in, right? Go back to how I interact with the world. It's like, I'm pushing out. It's a lot of like me expressing, and then but there's a lot of taking in as well, right? So I'm trying to sort of live with that. Things, think about it. So I was thinking about like look at the horizon of the pop on like the space and affects it.
Do you feel like you have to resist symmetry, or is it kind of easier to be abstract after making a symmetrical vessel?
Resist symmetry. I think that's a big part of it. I actually learned a lot about it recently from this linguistic concept that I kind of went into a rabbit hole. So there's this thing called asymmetrical language. So it describes a language even though it's within the same group. So for example, like Chinese language, right? Pictorial base has a lot of brushes, but where the asymmetrical language would incorporate those elements, but have language to it. So I think asymmetry is really important, But also I do think even though they're asymmetrical, but they're still very balanced for me. And I think there's some perhaps like drama there. Yeah. I think me and Alan had a conversation about it last year. He was making this pot, and then he really pushed it out to the point where it's like pot, it's all magic collapse in its form. And then I think there's a lot of drama that happens where you're pushing something to magic collapse. And then be able to capture that, I think that makes it it's really interesting. And again, we're trying to incorporate that as well. Less artsy-fartsy way is I'm actually some blemishes, kind of keep pushing out and push through it. There's a few ways we can address it. I have my hand building tools here. Just scratch the surface. It's kind of funny. You make it uglier before it gets prettier. Just like basically I'm just moving clay from a high point to a low point. And then if you really need material, you know, it's a little bit more clay. But for this one, it seems very surface sponge. That's it. That's exactly. But I'm not gonna stress that part too much. Do something kind of more drastic over here. So we got a little tree. One small one, big one, small one, small one.
Can you spin it so we can see it?
What?
Can you spin the pot so we can see it?
We'll see it as I go. Yeah, it's gonna take a minute to see the effect of it. Yeah. But right now I'm just kind of focused on. Also, like, this is kind of meditative too. I start thinking about relationships in like communities. What if I build like a little village here, and then I have a satellite village over here, public, and then just think about the relationship between communities. What that means, right? A lot of words. I feel like we use it so often, but we start using its meaning. I think community as well as words.
When you're making your indentations, do you think it matters if you start at the bottom, or like toward the bottom of the pot, or the top of the pot, or do you just go wherever?
It's important. I'm still considering the engineering of the pot. If I'm expanding the top too much and then it's going to slide the floor, then I probably shouldn't do it. Unless it's like really intentional. I've collapsed some pots also, and then that really changes how you work with the raspberry, right? Instead of like pushing towards the limit, it's like you're already went over and then you have to retreat. That's a different kind of dynamic working. I tend to not like fixing. If I'm spending like 60% of the time fixing something, I become a little less interested in that.
So it's just been air drying since noon?
Yeah. Yeah, I was going to cover it, but it's like I wasn't going to worry about that then. But it wasn't really practical. Actually, it was very yeah. So just kind of putting some shapes in, see how far we can go. This part seems like maybe playing all of it. So I'm going to do the larger movements, see what that works. Bring that in space. Expand its shape a little bit too. It's not pushing out and pushing in. That really defines the shape. Let's see. Relationship. If we make this little Because I have a few at my house, sometimes I will put them out, I want to get them, and see if they can part from this school potential. We'll start from there, and then form something about next. Okay, I need to connect some of these things. It's getting a little bit, honestly, oops. Play with different design elements, right? Line, repetition, variations, all that. But also, make it very easy. Make this a little bigger, just because. A lot of it is just like curiosity too, you know. Right now I'm just thinking like, now it goes this way, maybe if I go this way, but because, you know, my hands, I think it's gonna be a little bit different, regardless.
Do you feel like you're like consciously planning that out, or is that more intuitive?
It's definitely intuitive, yeah, and it's, yeah, I planned that,
Yeah.
but at this part, you know, I think I have a canvas now, so I can do whatever I want with it. This is the part where it's just like, I want to be free, yeah. Dimple is a good way to create like a focal point, but you overuse it, you get very patterny very quickly too. So some marks becomes motifs, and then I try to have like a healthy relationship with it. It's very easy to just overuse it, and then I start losing its meaning, right? So. Connect this part. And there's this space needs some sort of larger gesture. A lot of time I kind of walk around, you see it from far away too. Like at eye level, you just see what's going on. Also, my left eye, it's kind of almost blind, so I can actually just see random space really well. So I can see a shadow. So, so it needs a little bit more over there. So, just gonna do a large gesture. We'll do it on time. Have some time. I think the shoulder part, this part could be really interesting. How you kind of articulate it. Just for the sake of demo, I also want to show you how pedal it just needed very different sort of feeling to it. You know. It's also one of those things. It could be very easy to overuse. Let's just say we have this volume here. You can just really define that. And you have slightly different if the clay feels really good and strong, which this clay feels like, I can go a little further. Typical life thing. That's really not wrong. It's an impulse. Whatever the market leaves, I think there's a lot of opportunities that I'm putting in, right? Because every time I make a mark, I give myself an opportunity to make a decision, whether to be, I'll start with my preference, do I like it or not, and then you kind of based upon that judgment, move from there. If I don't like it, well, to make it a little bit more interesting, or what is it missing? One piece of that. We go in opposite direction. Switch between your dominant hand and your support hand. Sometimes I like to work inside with my right hand. And I can see a little bit differently. I really like this thing actually. I'll do another one this time. Maybe. I think there's still some change over here. So I'm doing that. One star is about maybe quarter to 3/8, maybe yeah. So it's got enough material, I'm not throwing it to like a paper thing. But by the time I'm done stretching it, like this, I will put it
Okay, Frank. So right now, sorry, over here.
Yeah.
So right now, inside you have that thin sponge,
Uh-huh.
and outside you have that like sponge rib.
Yeah, the finishing sponge.
Okay.
Yeah, it's both sponge actually.
So I feel like you had a pot recently in this series that it had more like almost like a cylindrical, like out, pushing out. And I was just wondering if all of that was done like with your hand. It looked like you like had used an object to push it out, but this
It's always my hand.
So it's
Yeah,
your hand.
always my hand or through the sponge. I haven't really tried or ventured into tools. I mean, I do think like tool usage, try to like take it easy, baby steps, right? I think some tools can really dictate, the shape of it. Let's try it tonight, yeah. Which one do you think? think we should do like let's try rib maybe.
Okay, sure.
Yeah.
I like literally thought you were gonna push a power tool.
Oh, Kevin does that. Yeah. Yeah. Kevin's a power tool kind of guy. So it's like, I don't know, that's not super effective. I think I can get a much more effective mark with my fingers than that. And also I think the ribs really kind of like, kind of make the interior look a little
Like too
funky.
sharp for that.
Yeah, a little, yeah, I'm seeing somebody digging in, you know. Yeah, I think.
Well, I feel like to get a good range of kinds of marks than just what you could use.
Yeah. What do you use for your surface? Like, what tool do you rely on?
Oh, like for my sculptures, I just like build these like little balloons that I mash together.
Yeah.
You're carving it.
Oh, there's some carving, yes, but it's mostly just like.
It's connected to shape. So in this direction. So it's very easy to just go up, down, and then you start moving. It's like a momentum. So then you do like guide it to the next part, right? At least like a circular form is actually a lot easier. You know, it's very natural for the eye. I just want to see what's on the other side. So that's the benefit of working maybe on the video on this. I do like wall sculptures by all means, but sometimes I feel like I wish I could see just that. How's my speaking voice now? I'm literally just mumbling. Yeah.
Earlier you mentioned that you had one class, probably a lot of us saw it, like there was like an image on your Instagram. Do you consider a collapsed piece a failure, or is there something conceptual there if you keep pushing it even though it's collapsed?
I mean, well, it depends on what your goals are, right? Like, I mean, what kind of person you are. If you're very result-oriented, sure, that failure is a failure. But if you're, you know, a learning-oriented kind of person, which I am, then it's not really a failure, you know? It's like, it collapsed because reasons. And then if you can articulate those reasons, I think this piece is worth it for me. And I've, you know, broke probably 2 of these, the 5 I've made so far. And then, but I'm really happy that it broke because, you know, I know, okay, I can't set it upside down on this phone, especially with 3 cats. It's like, I learned a little bit about that. So what's the other one? How funny that one broke. Oh, the other one I was just like forcing it. I flowered it too quickly. Yeah, because I was trying to get it into firing and all that. Anyway, amateur stuff. Blame on the cats. It's not my fault.
You care what the outside looks like?
I do, yeah. You know, I think that goes back to the metaphor of the human body, right? Like, yeah, we can have really nice clothes, but our form is awful. Clothes doesn't look good, right? Or we're like a horrible person on the inside. It's like, yeah. I think it's important to have a nice interior. So I do spend some time trying to address it as much as I can. You know, I work just wheels on assembly pieces. Like, I really try to give myself plenty access to the interior joint where I can seal it, make it work. And most of the people don't look at it. It doesn't matter. I didn't make it for them to know. I know that joint is welded right together. Nicely. That's important to me. Some people appreciate it. Some people don't care. Not up to me.
When you're making a piece, is the firing method like part of your, like does it dictate part of how you decorate it?
Sure, yeah. I think for these, I have 2, maybe 3, actually 4 different ideas right now on how I'm going to address the surface. I'm either going to try a high silica, low refractory type of glaze, which means it has a lot of movement, right? But I still want it to be matte. I'm a big fan of matte glazes because glossy glaze tends to repel. That one got glossy and I hate it. But everybody loves it, and I'm just like, that's the liquid magic glaze. But it's the same glaze on 3 of those pots, but they just have different parts of the kiln, different atmosphere, and one glaze can have so many variations. I do like that aspect of it. Yeah, but matte glazes, especially for more form-oriented stuff, I think it works a little bit better. Because, it wants you to come closer to the table.
Do you always glaze the exterior, or do you ever let just the atmosphere dictate?
That's subject to change. Because the wood kiln at Eiffel Dog, it's really more like a glaze kiln with a wood accent. So I do glaze my pots in that wood kiln. But if in the future I'm gonna have access to true atmospheric kind of firing, I think I'm gonna go less with glaze and more perhaps slips.
Cool.
Yeah, that's kind of my thoughts on that. How's your kiln? I heard there's a nice firing that just happened.
Yeah, it's good.
Yeah.
So, like we kind of work it, but I think I have ability to.
Yeah. How long was the firing?
I think we started at like 6:30 and we fired till like 11 or 10:30, something like that.
4 hours.
Is that right? Oh, no, in the evening.
Okay, yeah. That sounds about right. Yeah. Cool.
She nailed it.
Thanks.
All right. Any questions? You can ask me Jane. Once a year.
When you're using it, sorry, go
ahead, no, you.
When you're using the paddle, I'm wondering like what's going on with your inside piece, like.
I'm supporting it because I want to have enough support or resist, It's like, if somebody is beating me with a handle, I'm gonna fight back. It just happened to me, So,
So it's just support, it's not like, it's not too much force on the inside?
yeah, it's not, yeah. That's it, just, it's kind of like, it's the type of pressure you use throughout the wheel zone, right? It's like pushing against the wall, or it's more you push, the wall is going to resist more. Try to match the force that's being exerted.
I did. So when you're doing like, not basic forms, but when you're doing like abstract decorations like this, how much of a conversation is it with the vessel, with the material? Like, do you feel like it's 100% your will on what's happening, or do you feel like you feel or hear something from the material or the piece?
Yeah, well, that's kind of a question about control, right? I think I have a lot of control in the forming of the cylinder.
Right,
But once I get, at this point, I'm almost like, I become more passive, more responsive. I try not to react as much, I try to respond.
Right.
So it does take a different relationship, yeah.
Can you speak a little bit more about your, it sounds like you had some, I had a hard time hearing in the beginning, and then also about your kind of background. I know you're in chemistry, and then you have some art history, and just like experience in ceramics.
Well, I stumbled upon clay a little bit later because I was like, I just didn't know what to do. I know I didn't want to go chemistry, I wanted to like hardboard. And then so I went to like philosophy, sociology, geography, logic, and then a bunch of other literature. Like I had no idea what I was going to do. You know, I just know following my parents' footsteps was not it. Both my parents were chemists. My grandparents too. They're all big biology people. And I was good at it, but it helps a little bit. Just like navigating place and location. Yeah, I don't think it's motivated by it. But as far as like art, you know, it was. I think it really comes from like learning about philosophy, and then you just start realizing, oh, you study philosophy, there's all these branches, right? You got linguistics, you got ethics, branches I cannot name, and then you have aesthetics, and I was like, oh, that's interesting, that's philosophy. So I got curious about that, and then a lot of it is stuff I'm reading actually, and eventually it translated to like, okay, I'm gonna take a course. And I think it was clay one, and then I took it. By the end of the semester, I had a pillow in my locker, and I was sleeping in the studio. I was like, wait, I think there's something here. Like, is this what devotion is? The first time in my life that I'm devoted to something. And then so I kept doing it, and then eventually become a art major, I think. But I failed my design one, just because like, and so I have a hard time to do assignments. You know, when I get a point, like can we just move on? But I have to do like, you know, repetition, 100 circles. Like, so this is horrible. Yeah, clay has been, you know, the one that really speak to me as a material. I mean, I was like dedicated. You know, I think I was taking 18 at that time, but you know, I knew if I want to get good, I just have to spend more time with it. You know, I think the entire spring break, me and my friend Gibbon, he unfortunately can't be here. What's up, Gibbon? We just took over the studio. It's like two of us. This like what 3,000 square foot of the studio, and then we just walls for walls, like working on. At the time we were working on 6-pound ranch, and that was like probably the second semester that we were doing it. First semester is handling, so we start with handling as hands. And the second semester we do wheel. So it was like 2 months into the semester, and we're just pushing it. And we were competing. We were competing with each other, and it was a healthy competition. We were also competing with like imaginary enemies. You know, like this big names, right? At the time, it was like Robin Hoffman, because he had a story that's very well published about how he learned wheel throwing in 2 months. And then I was like, taking 18 hours, I can do it in 4 months. And that's what I did. By sleeping in the studio. Stan would come in, because the first classes I had like 9:30, and then he would just like see me just on the table just sleeping. And then, like, what is going on? There's a little bit more here. Yeah.
You're leaving out the part where we had to like hide from security.
Oh, yeah.
So there's this closet at St. Ed's that locks, and like a few times I was with Given and Sergio, and we would like hide in this closet, but we had to put tape on the lock so we wouldn't get trapped. And we had to hold it really tight so security couldn't know that we were in there. So yeah, that was the drama part, and then we'd have to like hide from the cops if they ever walked by. So also throw in the dark.
Yeah, I made a lot of mistakes. Because, I had no idea. I didn't care, and I didn't know what to care, and I was not self-aware. And all I cared was just get good, right? But I was not thinking a lot about what it means to be a professional, what it means to work with other people. And I learned it the hard way, right? Because I decided to fire this gas can. And I observed Stan firing it multiple times. And I was like, yeah, turn this on, reduction here, see the gauge, damper close, play with the flame, comes out, I can do it, you know, watch this. And then so I ninja loaded the kiln on Friday, and then it was all my work, and then Gideon's work. And then we fired it. And then firing was successful, but on Saturday we went back to the studio. And then there's a giant chain on the kiln. It's like Home Depot, like 20-foot long chain. It was so dramatic. And I was like, really got caught. And it was a whole ordeal. Multiple letters, to the dean. But I actually cried, because I thought my career was already over.
You just thought you could like secretly fire someone at school without permission?
Well, why would we come here on Saturday though? Like, yeah, Stan doesn't come to on Saturday. So I can just do it, and then he will be impressed. As kids, yeah, you can do it, because I was trying to impress him.
I bet it was a little bit first.
I think he was, but but I think the lesson was right. Like, you have to consider more than just yourself, right? Simple lesson, but I'm learning the hard way. And now I'm kind of like, I'm very strict about studio etiquette when it comes to my studio. Yes.
Equipment's expensive. It's expensive. Equipment is, so if you ruin something.
It's that, but also just like, you want to find some sort of ways that you can sustain yourself, right? And then to do that, it's about, not just all about yourself, right? I think with being artists, sometimes you can be very, very self-absorbed, working in isolation, and then, yeah, you do this like small gesture of like goodwill once in a while, but I think it needs to be more, I think that's another thing why teaching has been very meaningful to me. It's one way for me to have some sort of artistic responsibilities, Because I'm really not good at anything else also. There's that. Good at most. Alright. It's time to walk around and see what's going on. We're on time. Okay, yeah. Like, I think because I'm talking so much, maybe I'm just doing kind of like a repetitive kind of thing. It is what it is. But I think for the demo piece, it's like cumbersome. But I think it just needs something a little more drastic. I'm not exactly sure how I'm going to get there right now. So, impulses. I want to listen to those impulses. Maybe.
You mentioned earlier that you like throwing them like straight to the cylinder, so that to the back, so that then you can change it from a cylinder to another shape.
Mhm.
You ever do that? Do you do that like after if you're?
Yeah. So since this doesn't have a floor, because I know like it's gonna be pretty hard to trim sometimes. This one actually might be trimmable since I didn't expand out that much. Let's keep working on this. I'm just gonna kind of move on from this. You know, it's gonna be what it is. But I think let's keep starting. You know, let's make this into more like a classical shape.
Does it stay in symmetrical form?
Yeah, the bottom is it right now. Yeah, so
It stays open?
no, it will be attached to slab.
Okay.
Yeah, because sometimes it's hard to trim it, so I want to be able to make the bottom however I like. So something will be located right above the way. Called clay response. Now I'm kind of just like asking the clay what it wants to do. The clay responds, then I can just see if it doesn't want to go where I want it to move. I can change or stretch. So it seems like I can still form it. So we can do a little bit of coil throwing, make some coils, attach it, and I keep throwing above the neck. I think that will be a good technique to cover. So let's make some clay. Ideally, I would still ledge this clay, but for the sake of time,
What kind of clay is that?
D-mix. D-mix is probably the most unnatural clay that exists. And I like that about it. There's nothing natural about working with so many years in contemporary air conditioning. And we have gone so far away from the clay, you know, dig the clay out of the river, have some relationship, take the whole image to do it. You know, I don't want to pretend that we're still there. You know, I think it's a nice thing. So that's why I just, it was G-Mix. It's one of the most juiced clay.
What is that board? Yeah.
Just a wooden board with a canvas on top. Yeah. You can use drywall too.
Anyone who's party that?
I like cement board a lot. This is cement board. Yeah, if you have home studio, big shout out to cement board. Low dust, very, very durable, and easy to clean. Has just a lot of absorption. Canvas is kind of like, it's cheap, but it's not great. Yeah, it can get dust. Just pour out. Do it quickly. So we're still getting that flat spot. Just twist it. So that was flat. That's long enough. You can screw and slit, but sometimes it's mixed. When you screw and slit, they tend to introduce some like small air bubbles. So I like to just work fresh. There's some moisture on it. And that moisture transfer, or difference is actually helpful. So we're gonna have a slightly drier piece, slightly wetter piece, kind of help you bond to clay a bit more. So, okay, come back. Just there.
Actually, I like it just like that.
Oh yeah? Oh, Bob likes it? Like that, yeah. It's my piece. I'm gonna push this joint, make sure that it's good. Clay, this part will support. This is same hours, some native stuff. Pretty strong. I'm gonna throw downward just until this joint is nicely welded together. This first coil is the most important because you're kind of introducing a drier or wetter clay to a drier clay. So I really want to spend some time compress that. But the second coil, the third coil, it's easier to weld together. I like this part where you work so close with your nose. It's not like that. It's like, mine, most kind of like.
Have you made one yet in this series where you, like, considering that there's no floor on it, you like misshape, have you misshapen the whole
I
bottom?
have not. That is going to be my next steps. I'm going to throw, I think the next one I'm going to make, I've been thinking about making it, I just haven't had time. I don't know, I was really too late. But I want to have a much wider base, and then start from there, and then manipulating it, starting to hold it, so we just change the bottom shape part, and then go from there. Just develop this whole cylinder, trim it off. That's what I say to me. Keep going. Any questions?
Who do you compete against now?
Who do I compete with now?
Yeah, who's your competition now?
Myself. I have a huge war launch against myself right now. Multiple fronts. Yeah.
Are you really sweating?
Huh?
Are you winning? The war?
It's hard to say. Coil throw is a good technique, you know. You have something that doesn't imply having enough clay, just add a little bit of material. Just make sure you've got the joint welded together. finish the talk almost. I don't know, there's something. I spent some time tonight. Yeah, work on it. You can make it back to the that's time, but I'm happy to answer any. If Sarah is okay, I don't know. People seem very into it.
Yeah, we got to get the residents out here eventually when we
Cool.
get out of the
Yeah.
building, but
So,
yeah.
Well, let's just say this concludes it down. I appreciate everybody being here, especially my supporters.